All right, welcome to another episode of the ConunDRUM podcast. I'm your host, Dre Pino, and this week my guest is one of my oldest and dearest friends, and that's Aaron Young from the Silver Tongue Devils. Like, we go way back. I'm talking neither of us really playing an instrument yet, sort of discovering that you could do that with other people and how that all works. So we were in like our first bands together. We skateboarded together. We got into a lot of trouble. So I would consider him my brother. So we get into all of that musical journey stuff, as well as him finding himself out in Alberta and becoming a tattoo artist, which was not planned. Needless to say, we have a lot to talk about. This was a long overdue catch up. So enjoy my conversation with Aaron Young. This is weird.
Yeah, it is. Your hair looks nice, though.
Thanks.
So, do we act formal and do adulty questions and answers, or do we just let the public know who have known you and been friends with you since I was a little kid?
A little of both, I guess.
Okay, I'll behave myself for now.
I'm just pouring some of that.
Get your vitamins in, yeah.
My vitamins. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Got quite the spread there.
I was trying to find something interesting to put behind me. The reality of my living room is pretty boring, so I was going to put the big Silver Tongue Devils banner behind me, and I thought that was a little too shameless. So figured you either get the record wall or the VHS wall. This one has more.
VHS wall is pretty cool. You probably got a lot of fucking cool shit.
Nah.
That's something that we're gonna actually. I had to bring up later. Is the movies and shit, because that kind of goes way back.
I'm a fan.
To Carmel's basement.
Yeah, even before that.
Yeah. So
yeah, movie fan since I was a little kid.
You like my
Like that? I noticed. I'm impressed.
Jessica made that.
Oh, badass.
Yeah. It has a little sign. I don't know how much you can see of that.
Deadly. Yeah, much better without the glare of the glass. That's awesome.
Yeah. Full on.
It's like a plasticine mold kind of thing.
I think she did it with clay. Like she sculpted it and then baked it.
Oh yeah.
And that's my father-in-law gave us one year for Christmas.
Very good.
He went down to like the Dominican or something, and I don't even know what it's made out of.
I couldn't tell the scale of it because it's behind you, but I thought, man, is that big enough to wear? But you can't put that on, can you?
No, you can hang it up on your wall.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. That's super cool.
All right, so I guess we can get this going.
Sure.
All right, so for people that don't know, Aaron and I go like way fucking back, like before I even started playing drums back. I think, well, it was about probably the same year I started, actually.
Me too. Yeah, I think I got my bass right as I met you.
Yeah, because I remember I was skateboarding in downtown Newcastle at the fucking Irving.
The mighty metropolis.
At the Irving. And then I forget who you were driving around with, but then I think you guys were pumping gas.
I'm going to guess Chris Hubby. Remember Poser?
Yeah, I remember Poser.
Yeah.
Probably Poser. And then you just came right over and you were like, fuck, you skateboard? Like,
I had just moved there, and from like living in cities to this small redneck town, and there was no skaters anywhere. Huh. And the few on our side of the river were, I guess, the military base kids, because they had been cultured and moved around the world. So there was like one or two of them that skated, but there wasn't too many locals that did. So when I just moved there fresh as a young skater, I was kind of looking for my tribe. So I think when I first moved there, I was just turning 14, so I didn't have a license yet. So for me to get to the other side of the river up where you lived, I would have been happy to have been hanging out with someone older with their license. And pretty sure it would have been Chris Hobby or possibly Cameron Fraser even.
It was both of them, because I was just about to say Cameron was there too.
There you go. So we would have tramped over to the Newcastle side looking for new skate spots and found a dude with a board. And I remember you had the Jason Lee blind slick with the hamburger on the bottom.
I sure did. Fuck, I love
I can't
that
remember
board.
what I did yesterday, but I can remember what some stranger had for a skateboard about 30 some years ago. Yeah.
Right.
Right. So my brain works.
So prior to moving to Miramichi, and I don't want to dig too much into this, and I've never really even talked to you about anything before the day we met.
Mm-hmm.
So you would move to Miramichi with Carmel.
Yeah. My mother.
She's the fucking best. Shout out to Carmel. But that was like you'd moved to Miramichi not long after your dad had passed.
Correct.
And I don't know any of the stipulations as to how any of that went down. But I'm curious about what you were doing or how, like, before that, because I don't know anything about that, like where you were actually born or what the house was like before hanging out at Carmel's.
Jesus. Okay. Well, that's a whole 4-hour interview there. So, you knew I grew up in the military, correct?
Yeah.
So I was born late 70s in Ontario to a military family. We then went from Ontario to South Shore, Nova Scotia. I lived in Mill Cove, Hubbard's area. I want to say 82 to 87. Then moved to Ottawa for 1 year for my father to take a German language course within the military. That would have been 87, 88 school year, would have been grade 3 for me. Then we hightailed her to Europe, lived in Germany for 4 years. So yeah, grade 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that'd be 88 to 92, I believe. And then, yeah, left Germany in 92, came back to Canada. I was in Riverview or Moncton, whatever, for grade 8. And as soon as we moved back there, my father passed away. So I had just turned 13 years old, starting grade 8, and my father passed. And we're now in New Brunswick. But my mother is originally a born Miramichier. So, only being an hour and a half apart, Moncton and Miramichi, she said, well, when you guys finish this school year, I'm going to move you to the town I grew up in where her family and more familiarity is. So anyways, yeah, that was it leading up to meeting you. So I had moved the summer between grade 8 and grade 9. I just landed in Miramichi. I guess that would have been summer in 93. I just turned 14, and me and my skateboard buddies from Chatham went over to Newcastle one day and met you. Then you're caught up.
4 hours.
Mm-hmm. That was the quick version. Yeah.
Yeah.
Military, moved around a bunch. Father passed away. Ended up in Miramichi. That's the quick version.
Yeah. So growing up, was there like a lot of what was the culture as far as music and stuff? Like, how were you exposed to music in the house?
Oddly enough, zero.
Really?
So I found it on my own kind of guy. So I always get jealous. You hear that, like, these musicians I know and respect, they tell you about, I grew up in it, and kitchen parties, and I had 10 uncles, going and stuff like that. That's you. I didn't have that. Like, I literally found it on my own, sort of. I remember my old Italian grandmother had a piano at her home, and it was sort of in the background, and never once in my entire life do I think I ever saw anybody ever touch it. And then it was told to me later as I was an adult that my uncle Rick played guitar. He grew up playing guitar in bands, but I didn't know about any of it. Even when I was a little kid, apparently they had an acoustic leaning in the corner at their house, but I never actually saw the man pick it up and play it. And then we moved to Germany, and my musical journey with instruments really starts with a family friend named John Morgan. I'll give him full credit right now. And he was a Newfie, Canadian military family, lived next to us. We were neighbors in Germany. And me and my sister, 3 years apart, and they had a boy and a girl that were relatively close to our age. The kids used to hang out, and on weekends, the parents would hang out, drink beer, play cards, Friday night shit. John Morgan played guitar, and my dad didn't. And I think my dad would see that and get jealous and be like, I want to learn how to play too, jam along with you. So right at the end of us living in Germany, my father went out to a flea market and bought a cheap classical acoustic. Oddly enough, that guitar he bought is literally sitting about 6 feet away from me right now, right behind where the camera is.
Fuck off.
Just over there.
Shit.
The guitar my father purchased in Germany at a flea market. He didn't play and I didn't play. But John Morgan taught him how to play 2 songs, 1 finger, 1 string kind of riffs. Just go home and learn this. And it was the theme from Peter Gunn. Do you know the song?
Not off the top of my head, but I'm sure as soon as I hear the first note.
When people think spy music, that's the song they're thinking of. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, that.
Yeah, so yeah. I used to hear that at the Star Palace all the fucking time.
Yeah, exactly. So That was the first riff, and then the second one would have been Satisfaction by the Stones. Just the intro riff, like the one finger, one string. Bah, 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 bah. So my dad came home one night and showed me those. And then immediately after, he passed away. So when he passed, we had this nylon plastic string guitar leaning in the corner, and I knew two riffs, and that was about it. And we moved, like I said, back to Canada. And a good friend of mine, Mike Fournier, was a childhood phenom musician. So he had grown up in one of those musical families. Uncles, father, brother, everybody played. They were playing in pro bands and stuff, like real actual gigs. And they'd bring him along, and he was this child phenom little shredder. Like he'd go up with the adults and rip solos and stuff. So he'd come over to my house. We became friends, skateboarding and punk rock and stuff. And he'd see my guitar leaning in the corner, and he'd pick it up and diddle on it and tune it up for me and show me a lick or two. And then one day he showed me, here, play these 4 sort of root notes, just single string, one finger. 4 notes, basically play the box, make a little bass line out of it. And he started shredding over top of it. And then that was the moment where I saw that 2 musical instruments can do 2 totally different things and work together. And my little 13-year-old brain just exploded. And I was like, I want to be a bass player right fucking now. So
all right.
Yeah, I didn't want to be a guitar doodly do guy, because everybody was trying to doodly do and sitting in their bedrooms reading tabs, and it just seemed lame to me. So I wanted to be different. Rhythm section grabbed me. I really would have loved to have been a drummer. Mom said they were too big, expensive, and too loud. I was
Not
like,
wrong.
And then that same year, when I was in grade 8, was 13 in Riverview before I moved to Miramichi, and in our clique of friends, so Mike Fournier was playing guitar. I was playing nothing, but Nathan Sanford, my friend, who's now in a whole bunch of bands in New Brunswick, people know him, and he was taking home the bass from school. He was in grade 8 music class, so I'd borrow the bass from him once in a while, and I was like, "This is definitely fucking cool. I want to be a part of this shit. Like, this is me." It grabbed me right away. So yeah, and then we immediately, at the end of, like I said, the end of that school year, we moved to Miramichi, and that's right when I met you. And I bought my first bass that summer from a music store in Miramichi. Do you remember Rocksteady?
Of course.
Down on the circle.
Yeah, the pawn shop.
Yeah. No.
Or no.
That's Rock Bottom.
Rock Bottom.
Yeah. Rocksteady was the actual music store that wasn't Millbank Music, the one up in Newcastle. It was in the alley by Cable 10, by Fundy Cable. Remember that? And then they moved down onto the square where I think the Royal Bank is there now or something. But anyways, I remember going in there for my 14th birthday. I got a card with $50 in it. Carmel said, "This is towards your instrument. You seem serious about this." I was like, "All right, I am. I want this more than anything." But the music store's in Newcastle. Could you please give me a drive? Like I said, I wasn't driving yet, and shook me up. I picked one off the wall. It was a bass. I probably didn't know. I didn't know shit about them, so I probably picked my color. I was like, "Oh, cool! Look at that one." And gave the man my $50. And I was like, "Woo, layaway, right on. This is mine. I can't wait to come back and pay it off." And my mom looked at me and she's like, "You're serious about this, aren't you? Like, this isn't going to be a fad or a passing thing. Like, you're going bonkers for this." She said, "I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. I'll pay it off right now in full. We're going to take this thing home, and you're going to get a job or chores or whatever, and you're going to pay me back. You're earning this." So she taught me good value and money, work ethic and everything. So I did. I paid off my bass right away. So yeah, 14 years old. I guess the day after my 14th birthday, I went home with my very first instrument, other than that classical from the flea market.
Fuck yeah. That would have been the bass that you would have played in all our early bands with.
You got it, buddy.
Yeah. I got a picture of that bass then.
I have
There's that picture of us at the mall playing that fucking fashion show.
That sweet black and white photo shoot. Which I had to give credit. I want to say might have been Jody Jameson.
Could have been.
I don't remember. Sorry, photographer. I don't remember.
Yep. It's fine.
Strip this with my coat on. Sorry, but probably don't.
No. It's all good.
I was out for a smoke right before we did the call.
Yeah, I'm in my unfinished, unheated basement, hence the plaid. And I have a space heater just blaring right at me.
My basement apartment gets a little chilly too, I can't lie.
Yeah.
So is the hat shadow a problem? I just realized that is every time I lean forward to talk to you.
Well, I mean, I can't see your beautiful face, but
good. We're good then. Fantastic. You might keep a viewer or two.
So I was going to ask if bass was your first instrument. You just kind of went all through that. So when you started to you mentioned finding your tribe. So what were the bands and like the bass players, or what stood out to you that kind of lit that spark into then going full tilt with well, not just punk rock, but just music in general? Because a lot of musicians like a lot of different genres. Like we're not,
Yeah.
like I'm more known as being a punk rock drummer guy, but I've got major roots in bluegrass, country, like all of that shit, right? And I
Yeah.
think we all kind of have those roots planted in different spots. But
Oh, of
what
course.
was it that kind of got you really like going to get from the start?
Well, it was way before I ever played an instrument. I was already into a million different genres. Love noises. I don't know how to explain it other than that. Right from birth, musical influences would have been, I guess, first off your parents because they're the ones you're around. So radio and TV in the late 70s, early 80s. Parents had a giant record collection in the living room. But I'll explain it first. My father was amusical, didn't really have anything he gravitated towards or talk about ever. He had no record collection. He was just sort of whatever's on in the background's on in the background. My mother, on the other hand, had a huge collection in both the car and the living room. So all the vinyls in the living room that I took inspiration from was mostly 50s rockabilly. She turned me on to all the Elvis, Roy Orbison, Everly Brothers. You know what I mean? The list goes on for like outlaw country, rockabilly.
Yeah.
Other 50s and 60s stuff would be loose tie-ins to the rockabilly subgenre. So like a ton of surf music at a young age I was loving. The whole doo-wop kind of thing, you know what I mean? So it's 50s music, but it's not really rockabilly. Like, so that was most of my living room, I guess, inspiration. Car, same thing. My mom always had like 50s music on, 60s music on, anything that had a cool story. So I would listen to like Johnny Cash tell stories, obviously, or like different dark things like Teen Angel or Last Kiss, and like these stories about a teenage girl dying, like shit like this. I'd be in the backseat of the car just eating it all up, being like, wow, this is dark, but it's cool. Like, I love it. So a lot of 50s and 60s music. But then as a young kid, my youth being mostly the 80s, I had older cousins that were into hard rock and metal by then. So it was imagery that grabbed me first. And I'd go visit an older cousin and go into their bedroom to like go play with their G.I. Joes or something. And there'd be fucking Kiss posters and pentagrams and skulls and naked ladies and shit all over the walls. And I was just like, man, this is cool. Like, this grabs me. I don't even know what this is. I don't know who an Iron Maiden is or what the Misfits are, but I see the imagery and I'm just like, this is badass. So yeah, I can thank family, I guess, is the first and foremost inspiration. Mom got me into a lot of vintage music, and older cousins got me into like what I would call modern at the time, heavy music. So yeah, instantly at like 5, 6 years old, I was rocking Motorhead, Iron Maiden, AC/DC, like list goes on, Kiss, blah, blah, blah. Like, so yeah, the mix of heavy music from older cousins and pretty music from my mommy, I guess, is the best way to get into that. And then leading towards punk to get around to your question. So I was a metalhead in the 80s and a skateboarder. So I'd read Thrasher magazine, Skateboard magazine. They also had music columns. And your pro skaters would always wear band shirts and stuff like that too. So, and do you remember Sessions? The t-shirt ad store that was at the back of magazines?
Yeah.
The store was called Sessions, and you'd flip through your metal magazine or skateboard magazine, and at the back you'd see all these t-shirts for sale. And I would see SNFU and DRI and all these cool band logos, but I still hadn't heard it yet. So being a metalhead and a skater, I would discover obviously Suicidal Tendencies and DRI and these thrash bands that just kind of like folded into skateboarding. And then I get deep into those bands and realize, wait a minute, these bands weren't always metal bands. If you go backwards in their catalog, they were kick-ass punk bands before they became metal bands. So the early Suicidal and early DRI. And I was like, wait a minute, like this shit's cool in this SNFU band. And who are the Ram ones? You know what I mean? Like, you'd fucking see these t-shirts and the Misfits and all the stuff. And I'd be like, Dead Kennedys logos and Black Flag bars. And I'd be like, I gotta discover this shit. It looks cool. It looks evil. It's fast. It's heavy. So yeah, I was a metalhead first, skateboarder, and then started discovering the punk bands through like magazines, pro skaters, metalheads that like punk. Like, it was no secret, like when Slayer came out and Jeff Hanneman had Dead Kennedys and DRI stickers all over his guitar. So anyways, the two went hand in hand to me. It's fast, it's heavy, it's evil, it's angry. So you got punk, you got metal, and you got these weird bands kind of in the middle, like Motorhead or all these thrash crossover bands, or Danzig, like all this shit. And I was just like, I love it all. I don't call myself a punk, I don't call myself a metalhead, or a skater. I don't labels. It's just I like all this shit. Let's get it going. And then because I loved the vintage music, like the rockabillys and surf music and stuff like that, it was no secret I was going to stumble in through punk subgenres of those too, like, you know, cool underground ska bands and modern day third wave rockabilly bands and stuff like that. And I'm like, wait a minute, they're all in the, all these cousins, all these family members are all in the same house now. I was like, fuck, this is badass. So, and yeah, skateboarding again through movies, skate movies. I discovered a lot of cool punk bands through skate vids.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the old 80s Powell movies had good bands, and old Santa Cruz movies had good bands. And then into the early 90s, I remember Plan B had some really good bands on them. I remember, do you remember Plan B's Questionable movie?
Yeah, we watched like the fuck out of that at your place.
There you go. So I remember turning at like 12 years old and being like, wow, what the fuck is Bad Brains? Where's Bad Brains been my whole life? Like, why did it take me to 12 to discover this shit? This stuff is awesome. Like, yeah. So sorry about the long ramble, but punk mostly came out of rockabilly and metal and skateboarding for me.
Yeah, because like prior to meeting you, that was like when the grunge kind of thing happened in Nirvana, you know, 91, 92. So I was kind of into that, and I had a buddy of mine that lived in Fredericton. His name was Adam, and his grandmother lived across the street from me, so he would only visit through the summers, and that's how I started skateboarding.
Is that the dude that had the Jeep and would skate?
Yeah.
I remember us jamming in your garage one day, and you're like, this is my friend from Fredericton. And he came and did the snappiest, tightest kickflip that was so high. And the board went whoop, right to the bottom of his feet. I remember my little brain exploding, being like, wow, that's how you do a kickflip better.
Yeah.
And sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
No.
I remember him.
Yeah. Adam Jeffries was his name.
I remember him.
Totally lost track of him. Have no idea where he is, but that's where I started skateboarding. Cause he like one day I think it was Saturday morning cartoons. So I was watching, you know, fucking X-Men or something. And I heard somebody skateboarding outside.
Nice.
So I was like, what the fuck is that? So then of course I go outside, and then he had his brother who was like 3 or 4 years younger than him had a skateboard.
Is his name Mark?
I think so.
Okay. So I believe later in life, in my adult life, I now have different friends that are tied into Adam and Mark Jeffries. So there's a well-known tattoo artist from St. John named Mark Jeffries.
Okay.
The sound of skateboarding is infectious.
It is.
That roll and that click. So I'm glad you went to the window then, dude.
Yeah. Because then he told his brother, he's like, you go like fuck off. So he let me use the skateboard. So then I started following him around. And then of course, you know, went to the Bathurst skate shop, and that's where I got the Jason Lee board. I forget who the dude was, but all I remember is he set up my board and he only had one arm. So he did the whole fucking thing with one arm. I can't remember his name.
I think his name was Cliff or Clive. Clyde?
Yeah, it was like the one, other than going to, I don't even know if Moncton had a skate shop at the time, but like Bathurst was one of the only spots that had a skate shop.
Moncton didn't really have a diehard core shop at the time, but they did have bungays, and at the back of bungays you could get like a couple little accessories or, you know.
Yeah, but this was like a full-on skate shop, like clothes, apparel.
I bought stuff from them over the years.
Yeah. So that's where I started doing the skateboarding. And then I remember in 91, I'd heard Bleach, but I didn't really pay much attention to it. And then when Nevermind came out, me and Adam took me and with his family to like some fucking vacation down in Maine, and bought the Nevermind cassette. And then just the whole, like, you know, you had the Sony, remember the Sony Walkman that had like the 2 headphone jacks? So you can have your own.
So that was that. I wasn't a rich kid. I didn't have one, but I remember them. Yeah.
I didn't, it was his. Anyway. But so that was like my first kind of like where I was finding my own musical taste. And, you know, because before that, it was like my brother exposed me to Motley Crue and Ozzy Osbourne and Sabbath and all that stuff. And my sister was listening to fucking like Corey Hart and Bon Jovi and all that stuff, right? So getting those two worlds, and then grunge in the middle of that.
Yeah.
But then when I met you, you're the one, you gave me a cassette that had Pennywise, and I think it might have been White Trash, Two Heads, and a Bean on the other side.
Possibly.
So you exposed me to like that genre of punk. And I remember skate punk, right? Yeah. And then, so then we were hanging out, and then that was it, you know? And that's when I was starting to learn how to play drums. And then it was like, okay, I got to learn how to play Bob, and I got to learn how to play fucking What was that Pennywise song with the super long snare fucking intro? I don't remember. Probably like
Pennywise
90, 90% of their songs, but anyway.
yeah.
You know, so that was kind of where I started to like just learn how to play punk drums.
Well,
And
you
then
were
we
already
started
playing
a
by the
band.
time we met.
Yeah, but I was playing like fucking Runaway Train and fucking Metallica.
Will you play Runaway Train for me right now?
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
It was a talent show.
I
I
hear you.
remember that.
I was in the same boat. Like I said, I
Yeah.
just bought my first instrument that summer. Like it was probably the month I met you. I just gotten my first instrument. So I would have been in my bedroom trying to bang out 3-chord stuff. Like it would have been, Ramones and old blues. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't any further in my skill level, is what I'm saying. You and I started at the exact same time.
Yeah. And you got better than I did. So
fuck off.
And well, I mean, you can play drums now.
Yeah, and you play stringed instruments.
No, I don't.
Well, a little bit you do.
Yeah.
Don't be modest. You
I know a G chord.
Yeah, well,
that's about it.
That's all your heroes know, anyways.
Yeah, that's true.
You think Dee Ramone could name a G chord? Like,
sure. So then, I guess if we're gonna follow chronologically, that's when we started. Like, mostly it would hang out at your place because my place was lame as far as like having like a spot to do things.
No, we were
and
allowed
hang out
at your house.
But yeah, I mean, we had the jam spot, but that was like, like as far as like hanging out and watching TV and just, smoking cigarettes because, my house wasn't that house.
Well, we were also outdoor kids, our generation.
Yeah.
Like, keep in mind, we were younger before you and I even knew each other. I was like road hockey and tree forts and shit. I wasn't an in the house computer nerd kid. And then coming up through skateboarding and snowboarding and again, sports of any kind, like I was just an out of the house kid. And then by the time I kind of transitioned to the sports more into like smoking cigarettes and thinking I was a cool dude, like you had to do that outside too and hide it from your parents at first. And then we discovered alcohol, so you'd like go into a field somewhere and get tanked and fucking smoke cigarettes. Like I never wanted to be home because home was lame. But your house, your dad was a musician, your brother was a musician. You guys had the drum kit and the PA system set up. So to me, I thought your house was super fucking cool. But nobody thinks their own house is cool.
Yeah, that's fair. I could get away with more shit at your place than I could at mine.
Yeah, but I could probably get away, you know what I mean, out of my house versus being at my house. So
yeah.
That's the trade-off when you're a teenager.
Right. But I remember like being in your basement, you're talking about that skate video. That's where like we were I remember staying up pretty much all of Friday and all of Saturday, hanging out at your place, smoking darts, passing out on the Lazy Boy, watching like Shaft and fucking Black Belt Jones, and then skate videos, and then Jimi Hendrix concerts, and like just the whole fucking gamut of it. Like that to me, that's one of like I don't know, how do I say it? Like one of those most special times in my life, formative years.
Yeah.
Doing that stuff. And I remember, waking up in the morning and getting up and grabbing a fucking export blue from the fridge and
then we go to band practice.
Then we go to band practice. Yeah. We'd hitch home. We'd hitch to my place and fucking
quick look over there.
So
my asthma.
Yeah. So what was it like in the house at that time, like transitioning to being here in Miramichi, like in that house?
Personally, I hated it, but I was too young to grasp the situation maybe from an adult's point of view. So given the things I like or did keep in mind, at 13, 14 years old, I was into skateboarding and playing hockey and like obviously puberty kicking in. You want to chase around the skirts and and like discovering booze and drugs and cigarettes, and you just, like you said, formative coming of age years, you want to go do bad things and do selfish kid shit. But to flip it, when my father passed, when I lived in Riverview, my mom would have been just turned 40, 2 teenage kids in a town where she doesn't know anybody. Her hometown is only an hour and a half away. Obviously, she was going to go do that. That just makes sense. But to me, discovering Doc Martens and green hair and nose rings and skateboards and cute girls in Moncton, I thought was a big metropolis of the city. So I was like, you're going to take me out of the city and move me to this shitty little redneck town where they're like 20 years behind and everything, and they're going to fucking throw rocks at me and shit. Like, I hate this. I do not want to move to Miramichi. I was so dead against it. I came to appreciate it later in life as an adult, and I look back and say that she's home. But like at 14 years old, with my green hair, my Doc Martens, and my skateboard, and my dreams of becoming a punk musician, moving to Miramichi was the worst thing on earth that ever could have happened to me. So there was resentment from myself towards my mother, but I wasn't mature enough to see from her point of view, like only 40, 2 teenage kids, just lost her husband, you know what I mean? In a town she doesn't know anybody. Obviously she wants to go to her hometown. I couldn't appreciate that at the time. I wasn't mature enough to. Different perspective now, obviously, looking back. But so at the time, I was angry about living in that fucking town. I hated it. I moved there and obviously didn't know anybody at first, but I said in looking for my tribe, I moved there in the summer and the military base was right by my house. Remember that? It was like a 10-minute walk behind my house. And
they had those teen shows, whatever they were called.
Yeah. And then there was a couple of kids that had maybe Doc Martens or colored hair or like a cool band t-shirt, or one of them might have a skateboard. And I was like, all right, maybe these people are more my people than the locals in this town. And not to say I haven't become great friends, obviously, with Miramichi locals. Like, I'm talking to a lifelong friend of one now, but the perspective of a 14-year-old with a skateboard under his arm that just moved to this little, basically fishing community, like it sucked until I started finding the odd person here and there, and then it started to settle in. And you know, I did all my high school years there, so I was there for 4 years, I guess, and got to know my friends. And then, like I said, I was only living there a month or two when we were across the river when I ran into another dude with a skateboard from Newcastle named Andre. And then, you know, you'd meet another one, eventually you had your little clique, and you're like, wow, you play an instrument? You play an instrument? I'm just learning one, and let's start a band. And you were part of my very beginning. So, eventually the resentment went away, and I learned to settle into Miramichi. But there was family there, so I got to know them that I didn't know from my previous youth. So, younger, growing up military, I tended to know more of my father's side of the family. We'd only visit Miramichi once a year. Maybe in the summers we'd go visit my mom's side. But now, living and submerged by them all, I got way tighter with my mother's side of the family. So that was cool. And like I said, I did meet some genuine friends. And I did play sports too. I'm not just this like punk rock guys.
Yeah, you were a goalie.
Oh yeah, I was a goaltender for rep hockey team too. So there, I mean, it was great to meet all my hockey buddies that I grew up with in Miramichi. So there was some definite cool points and benefits, but maybe I just didn't appreciate them enough when I first moved there as a youngster.
Well, if it wasn't for playing hockey, then you wouldn't have met Jack. And then that wouldn't have started our first like real band.
Nope, you're wrong.
No?
Sorry. Yep.
Okay.
I didn't meet Jack through hockey.
I thought you guys did.
Nope. I actually forget the very first meeting of Jack, but I know it wasn't through hockey. Jack's younger than me, so we didn't ever play hockey together.
Okay.
Our age was staggered enough that every time we each had a birthday, I jumped a level and he was lower. We were never in the same conference or like bracket or whatever at the same time.
Okay.
No. So,
because I just remember when you introduced me to him, because he, like, you and I started playing like songs or whatever, because we were in another band with Matt Gay and Roxanne and all them.
And Pierre.
And Pierre, yeah.
Is it Boudreaux?
Richard Boudreaux.
Richard Boudreaux, that was it.
Yeah. And then from that, we were like, yeah, fuck that. They're not doing what we want to do. And then we started our other band, and you were like, I know this guy from hockey. So that's why I thought it was from hockey.
No, it wasn't hockey. How did I meet Jack? I want to say through his cousins, maybe. Or something else musical. No, Jack and I did definitely both play hockey, but I don't think that's how we met. So I knew you first out of everyone in that band. And then I think I met Bruce second, but didn't really know him. It was just a meeting. So actually, you were part of the story. Fuck, I'm telling stories backwards now. Okay, to back up a little bit, get my first bass I'm 14 years old, and you're what, 1 year older than me? You were 15 playing drums?
Yeah.
You're 78, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No, sorry, I just exposed your dark secrets. You had a pissy look on your face when I said that. Wah, wah. Anyway, you can edit this. So,
no.
Anyways, I'm 79, you're 78. Meet you through skateboarding. We each figure out that we're both into like punk rock and grunge and stuff. and we're both learning instruments. So you and I hook up musically. I remember that. Not jamming it, but talking about it.
Yeah.
And then we started that band you had just mentioned. Then I met Matt Gay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm embarrassed to say how I met him, but he approached me and said, "Hey, you're Aaron Young. You play bass, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." Even though I probably had the thing like a week and learned like 2 Ramones songs, but I was
How
like,
you
"Yeah,
do it?
I play bass."
Yeah.
So he's like, "Let's start a fucking band." So I was like, "Yeah, I got our drummer." So I think it was you, me, and Matt, and then you knew Richard Boudreau, but I didn't. And Matt was dating Roxanne at the time.
Yeah.
So like, let's all combine and we'll start this, like, in my mind it was punk, but like,
Yeah, because like No Doubt and them like they had a girl singer, so we were like, we'll have a girl singer.
No Doubt wouldn't even have been a band yet.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I wanted to do like a whole lot of old school punk.
No, that's right, because No Doubt came out way after that.
Yeah, that would have been later.
Scratch that.
So I wanted to do the punk stuff, so did Matt. We liked a little bit of the grunge, but more punk. And you were good on both. So you, me, and Matt were all good on like anywhere from Ramones to Nirvana type stuff. And then you brought in the Boudreau guy, and I thought, like, he seems a little preppy. Like, he wore khaki slacks and tucked in shirts, but he had the gear. He had a guitar and a place to jam. And I was
like,
like,
Fender Strat. Yep.
Yeah. And we could talk him into like a little bit of maybe Rancid or Nirvana, or like, you know, a little bit.
He just wanted to play Green Day and Pearl Jam.
Yeah. And Weezer and like bad poppy radio grunge, which I was not into. And then Roxanne, I don't think she cared. She probably just would have played whatever, but she was into like, you know, the grunge thing too. And she probably took inspiration from like Courtney Love or somebody back then, or L7.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, or like I said, L7 or 7 Year Bitch or some of those types of bands. And anyways, I remember all of us like having fun, it seemed like, at all the band practices. But then I think as personalities, we were just different people in our lives. Like, I can't picture Boudreau and Roxanne Standring in the same band, knowing them as people. And it's nothing against either one of them, but just like, one just seemed like this cool, wild, crazy lead singer, and one just seemed like this quiet, preppy dude. And I was like, so I think we just sort of parted ways that way.
Yeah.
But I knew right away, I was like, I'm always going to work with this Dre guy. He's a sick drummer. I don't care what our next band is, but he's coming with me. And so you and me. Oh, sorry. I was going somewhere with all this rambling. That band we started, we played our first gig at the military base at the Junior Ranks mess at the bar.
Yep.
And this guy got up and sang a song with us. I think he'd get up and did a Nirvana tune with us. This long-haired guy from Newcastle, I didn't know, but Matt knew him. And he was like, "This is my buddy Bruce." It was Bruce Parks. And I was like, thinking in my head, like, I don't know you, guy. You better be good. You know what I mean? Not knowing I'd become his best friend and live together as roommates and be brothers.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's where I met Bruce, but I still didn't know him. So when our first grunge band thing broke up, we were like, oh, we got to get that Bruce guy. And I don't know if it was maybe Bruce that introduced me to Jack, or as a young skater punk kid, I had met the Bowie brothers from Fredericton. So John and Matt Bowie. And maybe they were in town in Newcastle visiting, and I met their cousin Jack through them. I really can't remember how I met Jack, but I do remember us solidifying the idea of the band. Remember the last day of school every year was like National Jig Day?
Yep.
So I remember it was MVHS's, so the Newcastle side of the river. And I was over there hanging out with all you guys. So you were at the French school right behind. But I think it was you and me went over to MVHS and met Jack and Bruce. And we all jigged school, went and got trashed in the woods or something dumb. And I remember us being all hammered, being like, "We're starting a band. That's it. We're a band now." And from that moment on, we started jamming, and it was more punk. We like got rid of the whole grunge influence stuff. I'm like, we're gonna be a punk band.
Yeah, I think before, because like my very first time I saw Jack in person was we were in my garage.
Okay.
And you're like, Jack's on his way, and his dad dropped him off.
Okay.
So he had his Fender Strat and his Marshall amp, and I remember hitting the button on the garage door, and I remember it coming up, and I saw the skate shoes. Then I saw about this much leg, and then shorts, just shorts for days.
Jorts.
Right, because he was like in his full like fucking skate gear or whatever.
90s pop punk guy.
Yeah, and that was the first time we jammed.
Okay. You just made me think of a weird memory unlocked. For that brief period of time in between those two bands I just kept mentioning, we had another band.
Popsicle Pete and the Fudgicle Five.
You remember, that was it. Popsicle Pete and the Fudgicle Five. And it lasted, what, a week or two?
Well, because it was you, me, Pete
Pete.
McIntosh,
Yeah.
and Bruce and
Oh, was
Jack.
Bruce in that? Okay,
Yeah, it
gotcha.
was Bruce and Jack.
Okay.
That was Jack's first time playing with us was with Popsicle Pete. And
So
then Pete,
basically we Pete stopped jamming with us and we kept going as a punk band.
well, I don't want to say he stopped
I was
jamming.
I was trying to find a polite way to say it, Dick, and you went and fucking threw me right under the bus.
It wasn't you, it was the band decision
Well, Pete, under his own fruition, being the nicest dude ever, decided to
to
go his own way.
to take away. Yeah. Well, basically, pretty much. Because I think we had like a band meeting and stuff. And like we were playing, like you said, we were playing NoFX and Rancid. And then we wanted to like write our own stuff.
Yeah.
Because like right away we were into like, okay, we're gonna be a band, we're gonna write our own music.
We were always writing, even back in our like
Yeah.
grunge punk band when I was 14.
Yeah.
Always from day one, the day I
Day
got my
one.
instrument, I've always been writing original
Right.
music.
And Pete just wanted to play like fucking Eric Clapton licks.
I think so, yeah.
Right. So we were like, and he was like, yeah, no. So yeah, it wasn't that we kicked him out. It was a mutual.
He was probably too good for us.
Oh, he was a phenomenal guitar player.
That's what I mean, like in a literal way. I don't mean attitude.
Yeah.
I mean, like he was literally just too talented for us,
Yeah.
probably. Because yeah, he grew up in a musical family, and his dad and his brothers and his mom, and they all play, and
yeah,
they're all
and
fantastic.
they all, yeah.
Love you,
Paul,
Pete.
Paul, I love you, man. And Paul's still, doing stuff. He's putting albums out. He's,
Oh, yeah.
on the piano. He plays here every once in a while.
I hear his name around Fredericton here all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's out in Woodstock area or something like that.
Oh, is he? I thought he was here in Fredericton.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know shit.
Yeah,
I'm a drummer. I'm not supposed to know.
fair. A French drummer at that.
A French drummer at that. Un, deux, trois, quatre. So we did that, and we started playing like house parties, and I remember we played at the fucking Civic Center for like some skating party, like with a bunch of kids.
You could have just said we played at the Civic Center and left it at that.
Okay, I'll edit that.
Sounded way cooler.
Yeah.
I forgot all about that, actually. You're right, though. When we were like, I don't know, 15, 16, we played this giant arena.
Yeah.
Totally.
And then we played like a couple of house parties, and then we played at Gene's birthday bash, which was
Bollywood
out at the old hotel.
Yep.
And was it Bingo? Yeah, it was Bingo. Threw up all over himself.
Probably. That's Bingo. Yeah.
People don't know who these people are, but that's all right.
Bingo.
So we had enough to like record an EP at least of original songs.
Yeah, we did. We had a handful.
And sadly, a few of the I remember. Well, you had moved away, and I remember meeting up with you at like a SNFU show in Fredericton, just randomly.
I remember that. Oh, that's like years and years later. You just
years later. Yeah, there's a whole decade between that. This is like a Tarantino flick, so we're gonna jump back.
I want to say that SNFU show was around 08-ish.
Yeah, 100% it was 08.
Okay.
Because I had moved back to Miramichi in 07.
Okay.
And I took a year off of work to stay home with my kid while Jessica went to work for Fat Cat.
Gotcha.
And then when I started going back to work, so I remember taking the time off from my job, which would have been in 08, to go see that show. It was a me and Jack road trip.
Oh, that's right. Jack was with you. I do remember running into you guys at the SNFU show.
Yeah. So that was random. And this is all just a lead back around to all those songs that we recorded when we were kids.
Gotcha.
You had an old cassette that we had recorded on like this little fucking, I don't know, like cassette player or whatever, Ghetto Blaster. Because that's what you did. That's how you recorded shit.
Not to interrupt you, but those original cassettes you're talking about are literally an arm's length away from me right now.
Yeah. Because I remember you transferred them to digital and you emailed me them after that show.
Gotcha.
I think I have a couple of them, but there's some songs that I don't remember. They're not on there. There's some songs I remember we had, but I haven't found them or haven't seen them since.
Well, I think it's two. I have two cassettes full of us jamming right here next to me.
Yeah. Fuck it, yeah. Anyway, but I think we could have probably taken that. I mean, being in Miramichi, there's not a lot of opportunity to do shit like that, in bigger cities.
No.
So I think the wheels just kind of got stuck in the mud.
Also, the time and the technology. It's like now everybody's got recording software. You probably make a full album just on what's on your phone now. But you're talking when we started jamming, it was 93, 94. So the best anybody would have had due to money. Again, there was no internet to order shit. So you got what was locally and you borrowed it. So once in a while, you'd have a friend that might have like a Fostex 4-track you could borrow, or you know what I mean? And I had eventually in my later teens, early 20s, I got a vintage reel to reel. But even it was a mastering one. So it was like a left and a right. You basically had 2 tracks. So yeah, I remember us sticking ghetto blasters in the corner room. But what I'm getting at is if we had Pro Tools in 1993, we would have been pumping out albums as teenagers.
Yeah.
But we weren't.
But we weren't. And like I said, because of that lack of being able to take it to that next level, we kind of got stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
And that was right around the time that you and Bruce moved away to Fredericton. And I think it was because of that stalling that you weren't getting anywhere. And you guys were like, we need to get somewhere else to keep this going.
Oh, well, to put it in better perspective, like I knew that I would have been leaving the 4 years prior. The day I moved to Miramichi at 14 years old, or just before my birthday, so late 13, early 14, I knew as soon as I got there, I was like, the second I'm legally allowed to move out of the house, or the minute I'm done high school or whatever, I'm the fuck out of this shitty little town. So that's what it was. It was
okay.
Because you're talking about 97. I think I might have still been 17. No, I would have turned 18. So yeah, I went out to Alberta. That's what it was. I went to Alberta first, and then when I came back, I moved to Fredericton.
Okay, so I thought like, because it just all lined up, like where we were kind of at a standstill with the band because shows were very rare,
and we made them ourselves.
We made them, so to take it to that next level, and then you guys kind of moved away. I don't know, like, did Bruce go straight to? Do you know if he went straight to?
He came a little bit after me, so
okay.
Yeah, the town, it had nothing to do with like our band, like being the fact we were high school kids or just out of high school now. It was a year older. So it was just the town. I needed to get the fuck out of the town. I just didn't like Miramichi at 17, 18 years old. So I went out to Alberta to make some money, came back, and I knew I just wasn't ever going to live in Miramichi again. But I was like, if there's a music scene anywhere in New Brunswick, the biggest cities at the time would be, Moncton, St. John, or Fredericton. And I'd already lived in Moncton, and musically it didn't grab me. And I was like, St. John just seemed like a dirty, junky town at the time. And I was like, all right, Fredericton, it's like not too far from Miramichi. I can go home and visit when I want to, but also it seems to have the better music scene. So I'm going to go check this out. So after Alberta, I went back to Fredericton, and I was there first. So we're talking now, it would have been 98, maybe even early 99. And Matt Gay was in Fredericton by then. So right away, I already had an in with somebody to jam with. So
because he was in EI, wasn't he?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. This is how we started EI.
Yeah.
So from Matt Gay jamming as kids with you is how I knew him. Like I met Matt when I was 14. So then now skip ahead to I'm 18, living in Fredericton. Matt's already been there for a year or two. He was already tied into the Fredericton punk scene. He knew everybody for a year or two before me. So the second I got to Fredericton, I instantly had somebody to jam with, and he had other people lined up. So he introduced me to Rob Feeney. So me, Matt, and Rob Feeney hung out, I believe. I want to say the first time I met Rob was the first time the Misfits played New Brunswick, would have been 98 at the Moncton show, and then St. John the next night. Yeah, I remember meeting Rob Feeney at the Misfits show in St. John in 98, and we all agreed we got to start jamming right away. So it might have been the end of 98 that we started EI as a trio in our jam space, and we would each take turns singing, but we knew Bruce was coming. He just hadn't moved yet. So we were like, until Bruce gets here, let's just each sing a couple songs to get us through the jams. None of us could sing. We were fucking horrible. And I couldn't, not only could I not sing, but I couldn't sing and do things with my hands at the same time. And so it was very hard to do. But so the first couple months to a year maybe of EI was late 98. And we were jamming as a trio, me, Matt Gray, and Rob Feeney. And then Bruce came to town.
Were you on guitar in EI or were you on bass?
No, bass, always bass. I didn't play any other instruments yet then. I didn't start drums and guitars and stuff until like my 20s. So all from 14 years old to starting EI at like I was 18 or 19. I was still only just electric bass guitar.
So when did you start? Like what project made you start playing guitar? Was it Argentos?
Either Argentos or Little Bastard, maybe. Maybe Little Bastard came first, or both at the same time. I really don't remember.
Yeah, you've been in a lot of fucking bands.
Oh, dude, so many. I tried to add them all up one day, and I tried to write a paper list to like literally know what bands I've been in.
Well, I started to.
Oh man,
that's like the one thing I did on like so. Neighborhood Watch.
Oh, yeah.
You were there for a little bit, which you got to open for Circle Jerks, which fuck you. Helm.
Oh, yeah.
Badass fucking doom metal.
Thank you.
Rockin' Argentos, EI,
Yeah.
Trouble Starters,
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's just like the metal punk, like rock stuff.
No, there's like triple that.
There's like more than that.
Way
and
more,
then
no, triple, literally.
Then there's the rockabilly shit. So there was Dapper Dan, the Drive-In Classics.
Started as a rockabilly band. Used to be.
Used to be. Yeah, I was there for like the first couple jams. And then the Royal Tones was another one.
Yeah.
And you guys played like Dapper Dan and the Royal Tones played quite a bit of shows.
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot of fucking shows.
A lot. It's basically how I made my living for like 4 or 5 straight years.
If we kind of back up just a little bit from that, from the Dapper Dan and the Royal
You're
Tones.
skipping a lot of bands.
Well, there was another band that you and I were in called Dirty She.
Yeah.
And that was the first time since that old band broke up. Like Jack and I started playing music in like little kind of cover 2-piece acoustic stuff. I wouldn't say I was like really playing the drums. Like it was, keeping a beat basically.
Yeah.
But that was like me getting back into actual drumming was with that band. And it would talk about a fucking learning curve to like decades of not doing it to then having to keep up.
Yeah, but you can't. Knock a bit of dust off of you're still you. Like,
yeah. But so yeah, Dirty She. And then I remember we had recorded some songs. And I remember you were saying you wanted to learn how to play stand-up bass. I think you bought a stand-up bass. You're in your studio. Yeah, I got a stand-up bass. I think I'm going to learn how to play it. And then a couple months later, you're in fucking bands playing the stand-up bass.
I mean, your timeline's a little bit off, but that's basically it.
Yeah.
So I got my first upright. Well, I always wanted one my whole life. So
yeah,
like I said, as a little kid, I was into rockabilly. My mom got me into 50s rockabilly right away. And there was just something about hearing that I'm like, fuck it. That's awesome. It's bouncy. Not knowing names or styles or anybody. Like I didn't know who Willie Dixon was when I was 5 years old, but I know I like so, and they just look fucking cool. Like F-holes fucking look cool. They're sexy and they're curvy and shit. Like so anyways, love 50s music, and growing up in punk and metal, I don't want to say hit it, but I didn't like talk about it with a lot of my friends because I didn't think they would care or like that stuff. So when I was hanging out with my skateboard buddies and we're talking about Slayer, I wasn't going to be like, are you guys big Everly Brothers fans? Because I am. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't think it would fit. It's not that I was hiding my love of rockabilly. I just didn't think other people knew what it was. And then when you started seeing like second wave type acts come around, I shouldn't say come around, they've been out, but like Stray Cats and Reverend Horton were kind of like the guys in the 80s. And in Europe, it was huge. So it was always around. But then in the 90s, you started to see a lot of comeback shit. And then my punk friends were like, okay, rockabilly's not bad. What they meant was psychobilly, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I meant pure 50s true, like rockabilly.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'd always wanted a stand-up bass, and they're crazy expensive. Like I had no, like, especially to a young person. In me and my teens, if you said these are thousands of dollars, I was like, wow, you might as well just said 10 million. You know what I mean? Because as a teenager, I won't have thousands and thousands of dollars. So like they were just sort of a distant dream, and I never thought I'd actually get one. And I always looked at like flea markets and pawn shops. Like I always thought I'd come across a dusty old broken one I'd have to fix up, you know what I mean? Or get one off an old high school that didn't use it anymore, or something like that is what I was really hoping for. And then one day in my early 20s, I was in PEI and came across a good deal to get a brand new one from a store through the distributor. I guess their warehouse, they all had some damage. So it came from, I agreed to buy it without seeing it. It was off a music store in PEI. I'll never forget it. And the lady behind the counter just said, all it says here is that there's 5 in the warehouse in Montreal. They took a little bit of damage, but we don't know what. Nobody opened anything. So you're taking a chance. You want it for this insanely cheap deal. You can have it and just see how it shows up in the box. So that's what I did. So I think I might have been 20 or 21 when I ordered my first stand-up bass. And yeah, and I played it at home, obviously, like learning it in my bedroom. I already knew bass lines because I already played electric bass, right? Since 14 years old. So by the time I got to 20 or 21, I knew scales and runs and theory and some shit like that. But it was like, how do I apply it to this fretboard that's fucking 3 feet long and got no markers on it? I was like, this is going to be weird. But once you learn your points or your intonation are, like, it's the same as an electric bass. It's the same strings, same notes, same everything. So it was just applying it to this thing and then learning the physical slap. So I was I already had that part going in my early 20s. But what you were talking about when you came around and saw the stand-up bass at the studio, that would have been a decade later, I think. That was probably early 30s because I was already, we'll say, divorced by then, wasn't I, when we did Dirty Sheep?
Yeah, I'd never met your ex.
Okay, so that happened, I think, roughly right when I was 31. So I think I already had the stand-up bass a decade by the time you're talking about when you were saying I should do it. But maybe what you're thinking is like, I had never done it with anybody, and I had never done it in a band, and I had never done it publicly. I would always ask people like, I got a stand-up bass, you want to jam? And all my metal and punk friends would either say that's lame, or if they agreed and said, yeah, I want to do rockabilly too, they would start talking about all these modern day psychobilly bands, which I didn't really have any huge interest in. There's a few psychobilly bands I don't mind, but like it just seemed so candy. It just seemed like a Green Day with a stand-up bass. I was just like, this is corny already, like right out of the gate. And anyways, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do like a purist 50s rockabilly type act. Like I said, Roy Orbison, Chuck Berry, fucking Everly Brothers, Johnny Cash, whatever. That's what I was into. So when you guys started coming around, I wasn't renting out rooms yet to people, was I don't think. It was just us hanging out. So just after we did that Dirty She album, I'm guessing it was right after my divorce. So we're talking when 2010s, 11, 12, somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there.
And then eventually Trevor Young moved in.
Yep.
Who you and I grew up with back in Irving. He's a little bit younger than us. And I knew he played music, but I didn't know if he was in anything cool or not. I just kind of knew him as this acoustic campfire, tragically hip cover kind of kid. And he was good at it. Like he was a great performer. I'm not knocking Trevor. I just meant I felt his musical tastes were different from mine. But we were still buddies. And he came in we were both divorced adult dudes. So he came in and I rented him out a room. And I was down in the basement one day whacking away on the stand-up bass in the studio, and he heard what I was doing. And he kind of looked at me. He's like, why aren't you doing that in front of people in a band? Like, we could be making a bunch of money. Like, let's do some gigs. And I was like, no, cover bands are corny. I don't ever want to be in a cover band, like selling out for money. It wasn't even a principal thing. It was just like, I didn't want to be the guy known as like, what are you going to do? Go down to the Legion and play Brown Eyed Girl? Like, that wasn't my thing. I was like doing original, cool underground music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when he said it, I was just like kind of against it. And he's like, no, dude. He's like, well, just go play the same music you're already playing. He's like, trust me, audiences will dig that. Because I was down in the basement probably playing a ton of Johnny Cash, Hank 3, Stray Cats, Chuck Berry, fucking,
Yep.
And it's shit I was doing for fun on my own. And he's like, no, we'll just put together 3 full sets of what you're doing and book it. Sure enough, we did. So that's how Dapper Dan got started.
Yeah, because I remember you guys booked a show without actually having the full lineup.
You know the story? Yeah.
I was there.
Oh, you were there?
I was fucking there.
Okay, so you guys, you literally witnessed the birth of me starting my playing stand-up bass in public thing then.
Yeah, because like
at that moment,
I rehearsed with you.
What?
Yeah, you guys had Brian Davis lined up to play drums.
Yeah.
And you booked a gig for Canada Day at Mike's Bar and Grill.
Yeah.
And Davis couldn't get out of work.
Oh.
So you're like, fuck, who do we know that can do it? So you called me. I was like, sure. I had a tattoo appointment. I left my tattoo appointment, drove up, rehearsed all that Friday night, rehearsed that Saturday night. I was rocking the Stray Cat style stand-up fucking snare drum kit thingy.
That's hard.
Yeah. Well, I was like, you're going to do rockabilly. I'm going to fucking do it.
I've tried to do it behind another guy's kit, a band I was in, and man, it burns the front of the shit. Oh man. Anyways, kudos to you for pulling that off.
Yeah. So we rehearsed for 2 straight because you're like, okay, we need somebody for, it's only like a couple of weeks away or whatever. So yeah, I went up for a couple of, I might have went up 2 different weekends because I think the first time it was just you and me and Trevor. And then the second time I went up, we had Johnny P.
Okay.
And then Davis was able to do it.
Oh, okay.
So then I think it was like a week or so before you guys were going to just rehearse like all fucking week. And you're like, so you gave me the call and you're like, yeah, Davis can do it. So sorry. I was like, all right, cool.
Thank you for helping us then. I honestly don't remember that. My memory's
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, so I was there for the first Dapper Dan rehearsals before Davis took
you're
the fucking...
the original drummer then.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Mic drop.
Davis is fucking Brian fucking Davis. # Brian Davis.
Yeah, the Brian fucking Davis. Love you, buddy. Wow. So yeah, that is a fucking true story then. So that would have been late 2010, early 2011. Trevor and I were both freshly divorced.
Yep.
And camping out, musician dudes. And yeah, I guess you were there hanging out. So were you and Jack there for mixing the Dirty She thing?
I think we were there for mixing the Dirty She when you guys were like talking about it.
So my bands are literally overlapping each other. So yeah, we were recording a Dirty She album and Trevor's there hanging out. I'm playing stand-up bass and he's like, let's start a fucking band and book a gig. We do. Yeah. We booked the Canada Day at Mike's Bar in Newcastle. We didn't even have a band.
You didn't even have a rehearsal
yet. We're on the phone with them, but like, oh yeah, we're the best 50s music band you've ever fucking heard. Hang up the phone, look at Trevor and I are looking at each other like, well, we should probably put a fucking band together. And I was like, I know the two cats to do. I was like, yeah, Brian Davis and Johnny P live in Fredericton. We'll have time to jam or whatever and pull it off. And they're both amazing fucking musicians. Like, it's just unreal good.
Ridiculous, man.
So I was like, it's 3-chord music for the most part. So Trevor, as long as you're good at remembering lyrics, we can probably get through a shit ton of like Johnny Cash, Chuck Berry, like I said, Everly Brothers, fucking whatever. All these 50 staples, throw in a whole bunch of outlaw country that's like, whether it's old school or modern contemporary stuff, like Hank Freed or whatever, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's what we did. And we took a shitload of, I love these, they're so fun. Take like 80s pop songs, like guilty pleasure tunes, and then play them as ripping fast bluegrass tunes.
Yep.
And everybody goes nuts. It's like,
yeah, dude,
oh my God, I know the song. So you get the guilty pleasure of the poppy chorus stuck in your head, but at the same time, you're like, this is ripping fast and like super energetic.
The Gimme Gimmes fucking made a career out of that.
And there you go. Yeah. So
that's basically dad bod.
Yeah. Okay. So we were doing the Hayseed Dixie version of that. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they do exactly what I just described. They're a bitch and bluegrass band and they take all this famous rock and pop music and they just do their own versions of it. And it's catchy as hell and it's super good. And you love singing along and tapping your foot. So yeah, to fill in the holes of like, we need to cram together 3 sets as fast as we can. We did mostly, well, I guess thirds, like third 50s rockabilly, true 50s music, third, I would say modern day outlaw country, and a third of these like bluegrass covers of pop songs. And I'm telling you, when we would play live or whatever for the first couple of years of Dapper Dan, it was always the 80s pop covers as bluegrass. Look, it's the biggest crowd reaction every time.
Oh yeah. I remember
Cougars start jumping up and down. Like, yeah.
I think it was the second time I went up and we were rehearsing and we had Johnny P and we were doing that that Dream Walker song. I can't remember what it's called. It's that instrumental. You know what I mean? Sleepwalk. Yeah. And then we're also doing the fucking Misfits tune Saturday night.
Yeah.
They and I was like, why don't you guys like fucking intertwine the intro? And then
it's the same chord progression behind the leads and the sing, and it works out perfect. Yep. Yeah. It's literally the same song. Well, yeah.
So fast forward to now, talking about the surf stuff. So your current project is the Silver Tongue Devils.
Yeah.
Which you do play guitar. It's instrumental. And you're doing that same thing where you're marrying familiar songs, or at least familiar to some people.
That's right.
And you're kind of splicing them into other songs or your own originals. So how did you start that project?
When I was a little kid. Same thing as the rockabilly. I was into surf music as like a toddler, literally. I was like a little kid and I was madly in love with like the Ventures and the Trashmen and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about those hummable melodies and that poppy surf beat that, oh my God, I could listen to that on repeat all day long.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to explain it. There's something about it if they're the right tones, like because there's no singing. As a little kid in the backseat of the car on road trips, me hearing it was like, I want to say like you're almost making up your own movie or your own adventure in your head too, to the soundtrack. Like some sounded Western, like cowboy, Italian spaghetti Western, like Sergio Leone type, scary, what's about to happen type music. And then there's like the creepy at night type riffs. And then there's like, you know what I mean? They would invoke a mood, so to speak. Like I use the word movie in your head, but you know what I mean?
Yep.
So as a little kid, I was just madly in love with instrumental music. Fuck singers. I don't got time for that shit. What do you need singing for? Usually can't understand the words in most bands I listen to anyways.
Yeah. So how did you come up with the project itself and then getting the guys that are in the band?
I bought a new guitar. So
that's what it is, kids. You want to start a music project, buy an instrument, and then go from there.
That's literally what it was. So at this point, I was already mid-30s, I think. So that we're talking, I think it was 2015. I was living in Calgary still. and getting kind of bored of it. I was starting to miss the Maritime. I was like, and I owned a home in Fredericton, so I was like, maybe I should get back to New Brunswick. I've been gone a couple of years, and I had already planned on moving back, but hadn't executed the move. So I knew for the last couple of months of me living in Calgary, I was going to be moving back home soon. And while I was out there, I bought a Gretsch Black Falcon. And just like I'd already been playing guitar for a few years by then, and always wanted this fancy Gretsch. So I got like the Granddaddy, the big Cadillac fucking one. It was awesome. But that Bigsby and an A minor together, it's just the sexiest thing ever. So I'm playing more guitar is what it is. I was renting a room at West, and I'm just like playing a lot of guitar. I've never been a huge person on learning covers, or at least not the proper way. Like I wouldn't just sit there and strum by myself. I would get bored really quick. My attention span wouldn't tolerate it. So surf music is great because even though you're not really soloing, but you're still always playing some sort of melody. It's mostly
you're riffing.
It's got, riffing, exactly. It's not rhythm, but it's not lead. It's somewhere in the middle. It's just busy enough to keep my attention span. And so, I play a lot of like licks and riffing in my bedroom on this new Gretsch, and I was doing tons of that and had my recording computer with me, so I'd put down a few riffs and a rhythm part behind it, and I'm starting to get all these like originals together, and I knew I was moving home, and I thought, I'm like, well, fuck, man, I'm gonna start doing this for real. Like I've always wanted a surf band for years at this point, and who am I gonna message? And out of my record or music nerd friends, there's not many that like surf. I mean, tolerate surf, everyone goes, surf, whatever. But there's not many people I know that are just like, fuck yeah, like die hard surf music fans. It's a really weird, odd genre. So I knew Gumby was. He's a drummer. He's a talented drummer. And he had already been in a surf band. He was in the reruns. But even before that, when Gumby and I were in the Rockin' Argentos together, Gumby and I were in EI together. Like I've known this man for a really long time. And whether he plays or not, he's a music fan. He can nerd out on records all day long. He's just a super music passionate person. So I knew he was the guy to call. He wasn't in a band at that time. So I was like, hey, Gumby, if I come home and start a surf band, do you want first dibs on the drumming seat? And he went for it. He was all about it. And then Bobby and I were just like buddies and best friends, you know what I mean? And he had never really spoke as being a huge fan of surf at the time, but there was a few things he was into. He's like, yeah. He's like, because we're the same age and he likes some punk and stuff. So to him, he was into like, I would say the modern wave of surf instrumental. He didn't know anything about the 50s and 60s stuff, but he could name you like a couple of the 90s type bands. So he's like, yeah, they're cool. So I was like, all right, you're in. And we're going to switch because he's a smoking guitar player. And I was like,
yes, he is.
I was like, you're going to play bass. And I suck at guitar, but I was like, I want something to do different. I was like, I played bass in too many bands for too many years. I want to try something new. So either I'm going to be the drummer or the guitar player. And like, I can't sing. So like instrumental music is perfect. So anyways, I bought this Gretsch and started writing guitar riffs and messaged up two of my buddies in Fredericton and said, I'm moving home soon. As soon as I get there, we're putting together a surf band. And I owned a home in Fredericton, so I instantly had my jam space back. It was awesome. Like I had the studio in Fredericton. So the second I moved home, I fucking set up the studio and was like, boys, come on over. We're jamming surf originals. And we put it together like really fast out of the gate. So we only wrote one or two originals, but we had like, I don't know, probably 30 covers. Like right out of the gate, which is shit I already knew throughout the years. Like I didn't even have to like structure it or put it together or learn it. It's just shit I always knew. Shitloads of Huevos Rancheros covers and obvious Dick Dale covers and Ventures covers and like some old cowboy shit and whatever. And some punk stuff translated maybe, and then some metal stuff too.
Yeah, that stuff translates well.
Yeah. It's kind of how we started this conversation. Before you let me ramble, you gotta cut me off, dude. I talk too much.
Just what it is, man.
Now I'm enhanced. So I'm talking more. Anyways, the surf thing came about as a child loving the vintage stuff, as a 80s metalhead and 90s punk kid, loved the next generation surf instrumental stuff too. And I hate saying it because it's a cliche thing all surf bands say, but like when Pulp Fiction soundtrack kind of put it out in the forefront again in the early 90s to modern pop culture. There was always underground nerds, but it really put it out there to people to understand it and get it more. Still to this day, though, like, you know what I mean? Because you're a music nerd and we can sit here and talk about surf music all day long. But like people outside of my music, like I run into my mom, or, you could run into some lady on the sidewalk, and they say you play surf music. They're like, oh yeah, what's that? Like they have no clue what you're talking about.
They'll start.
And,
You just do the Pulp Fiction theme.
yeah,
like, oh, that's it.
they all look at you and be like, do you mean like the Beach Boys? And you're like, actually no, the total opposite of that. I was like, they're famous for their vocal harmonies. They said we have no singing at all. Like it's all instrumental with no singing, and everyone just goes, oh, like they don't get it at all. Like that's a totally bad choice, and it probably is. And then you say, we do like Dick Dale or the Ventures, and they still don't know what you're talking about. And then
until they hear it.
And then you go Miserloo, and they still don't know what you're talking about. And then you go, we do the Pulp Fiction theme song, and everyone goes, oh, I know exactly what you mean. And it's like, yeah, I just was trying not to say it, but I should have just started the conversation.
But everything's always cyclical, right? There's always going to be something that's going to like pull it back to the mainstream, and then it's going to die off, and then something else is going to come back and do the same thing. Like that's not just true for music. It's true for fashion. It's true for movies. It's like right now, horror movies are like fucking popping off like crazy. Yeah. Old slasher flicks, people are eating it up. And now there's a bunch of new slasher flicks that are out. Like fucking love horror movies.
Oh yeah.
And you have a couple. Yeah.
Not much of a movie guy, Dre. I don't know what to tell you about.
Okay. So we've nerded out on music. How did you, or when did you make the decision that you wanted to put tattoos on people instead of getting tattoos?
Fuck, I didn't make that decision. I was kind of pushed into it, to be honest. I mean, yeah, it was weird. So career-wise at that point, we're talking, I was mid-30s when I started tattooing. And up to that point, I already had my audio engineering degree, and I put it to a bit of use, but not a lengthy or full career. It was more like helping local bands and make ends meet here and there. But it wasn't like, and I'd done some famous audio engineering that isn't making music or isn't making records at all. It was like, I did a lot of TV and video game type contracts and stuff. And that got cool credits or accolades or blah, blah, blah. And what I'm politely saying is it paid my goddamn mortgage. Like it was paying my mortgage great for a while. Yep. But those kind of gigs are hit and miss. So I wouldn't say I was making a career of it, but I would like do cool shit once in a while with it. But also steel fabrication. So I made shit with my hands for years at steel fabrication shops, mostly through my 20s, had industrial type jobs like oil field and metal fab and things.
That's what you went out to Calgary for.
So yeah, that's what I was getting at. Is like I did the metal thing and then would do audio engineering and bands on weekends, and then eventually enough layoffs and I had more time for audio production and bands than I did making shit at a steel. So I just made the transition there, did that for years where I just played in bands and just made records for other people or did video game contracts and stuff. So it was all music and sound. It was basically my main job for, 4 or 5 years. And I started getting burnt out. I was in like 6 bands, and then you're trying to be on stage as much as you can. So like 4 or 5 nights a week, and then in the studio on weekends. And like, I'm not complaining. Like music 24 hours a day is my absolute dream. So I don't want to sound bitter or jaded or don't appreciate a good thing I had.
No, but it is exhausting.
I came to burn out after a while. And at the low points, they were getting too often compared to the highs. So it used to be when you're just gigging on weekends, you're getting like the best audiences because it's Fridays and Saturday nights. And like, you haven't overworked your band to the point the public's sick of you. So like every gig you play is still like fun and upbeat and like great. But when you're a working musician and just trying to pay a mortgage, you'll find yourself it's 4 a.m. and you're wrapping up cables in some shitty little town you've never heard of. And like, there's just one drunk guy screaming at you and blowing beer breath in your face while you're trying to get out of there, round up the band, you know what I mean? Your drummer's in the corner trying to pick up some fucking chick, and you can't find the singer who's got the keys to the van, and you're just like, oh, I just want to go home and go to bed. Like, I'm so bummed right now. But again, I don't want to ever sound like having a gig is a bad thing. Like, absolutely, like, pray for gigs sometimes, you know what I mean? So I will never want to sound bitter or jaded. I just think any working musician can agree with me or appreciate what I'm trying to say is like, there's moments when your passion will sometimes seem like work, and those moments suck because you don't want your passion to ever feel like work. Like, so I guess I won't complain too much, and I want to word things the right way and not come across as jaded. I totally forgot what I was rambling about now. You got me off point because I was all baked, but
metal fabrication, Calgary.
Oh, to tattooing.
And then to tattooing, yeah.
So yeah, anyways, I was gigging too much, getting burnt out, and not making the cash versus joy ratio, killing myself to barely make pennies, or, needing to make a change. kept owning my house in Fredericton, left it there and rented it out. And I went back out west, got all the Alberta oil money. Like, I'll have to get back into like fabrication or some sort of labor work. Like, it won't even be gigging. I assume I'll just probably be stomping around the oil field again. And I'm like, by then was early 30s, mid 30s, mid 30s. I was like, this might be my last run at this. You know what I mean? Go, well, I physically can move my body, like, go make a couple bucks before I become too old. And I didn't do it very long. So I ended up indoors at a steel fab shop in Calgary, which is good. That's a good gig. Paid a ton to do very little, fucking making shit with your hands, go home at night. I was on night shifts. And so the whole first year, maybe in Calgary, would have been, I think, 2014 to 2015. And it was only metal fab. I had no instruments with me. I wasn't jamming, wasn't gigging, wasn't doing anything musical. It was a year off from the burnout I had just come from, of being in like 6 bands and just like playing tons of shitty gigs for money and feeling like a sellout, a burnout sellout. And I was like, try something different. So I went back to metal fab for a little bit, then got laid off there. That's when the oil crash happened. The whole economy bombed out, I want to say, like maybe somewhere transitioning from 2014 to 2015, somewhere in there. And I got laid off from the metal fab shop. And I knew some musicians by then around Calgary. And one of them said, hey, there's a cool music venue in town that needs a sound guy. Weren't you an audio engineer? Do you want to go to that? So the Blues Can in Calgary, like, I want to say RIP because they just closed one of their former locations. But from what I understand, they're back on their feet with a new one. So glad to hear the Blues Can still around. I was invited to go be the like weekend sound guy. And so that put me back on the music scene in Calgary, getting to know all the bands, all the music cats, all the fans, all the collectors, all the whoever's, the instrument dealers, like just back in it in a new town. So I'm soaking up Calgary's music scene, and that was cool. And so then I started jamming with people, and I started buying up gear again in Calgary. And I was like, all right, I've been living here for a year without music, and it's time I get back into this. So yeah, then I had, jam space at my house and living with other musicians. And it was like I was tied into the network and I had the whole thing going again. It was fun. And I started playing in a couple bands. But it wasn't like I was doing it for a living again. It was like jamming here and there, more for fun. I would say I was paying my rent with the sound thing. I just realized I told half the story backwards. You're going to have to edit this. I'm stoned and rambling. My timeline's off. I just realized I told it back.
The timeline doesn't matter.
It does. No, I was thinking something's not lining up right, and I just remembered why. I'm literally telling my 2 years in Calgary. I'm telling the years backwards. So it was the metal fab for the first year, but right when I got laid off from that wasn't the jump into audio engineering. That was when a buddy of mine, I guess I can say, so Matt Harnish from Chatham, I don't know if you remember Matt or not, was getting married, and we all went to the Dominican, and Matt Stymist, our other Miramichi childhood friend, was there too. Met him at the Calgary airport. Hey man, haven't seen you in years. How's it going? He's covered in tattoos and I'm covered in tattoos. And at that point, he had been a tattoo artist in Calgary for, I think, a decade-ish, 12 years, something like that. And so then skip ahead a few days and we're hammered poolside in the Dominican. And he's like, Young, what are you doing with yourself when we get back? You've just been laid off. Like, you're going to be on Pogie. What's going on? I said, nothing. I'm probably going to hand out resumes, get a labor job and get back to making money again, kind of thing. He's like, no. He said, we just fired a guy at our tattoo shop, and you did art when we were kids. He's like, come be my apprentice. And I actually said, no. I was like, no, I think that's a young kid's game. I pictured you had to be like 19 and those big dumb ear spacer things. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't want to be some old guy at the shop that doesn't fit in with the kids. Like, I wasn't cool enough to go do it or something. And he's like, no, man. He's like, it's not like that. He's like, it's just you and me. I have one office. You have the other office. The owner is like an owner, but a non-artist owner. He's never even around. He's like, just basically, it's going to be our own tattoo shop. We'll drink coffee and smoke doobs, tell a few lies, and do art all day. It'll be fun. And he said, you got 9 months unemployment coming in. You got the time to learn up as fast as you can. And yeah, so Matt remembered that I did art when I was a kid, and he pushed me into it. He's like, let's go give it a try. And I fell in love day one and kept going back. And that was it. Literally the very first day, I just asked him many questions. And I was going to say did a tattoo on myself, but that was day 2. Sorry. He pushed me into it like hard and immediately. And I was like, yeah, sink or swim, kid. So yeah. Anyways, I was pushed into tattooing, and I didn't go looking for it. And I feel bad saying that because there's a million people looking to get into tattooing, and they go around and pound the pavement with a good portfolio and under their arm and ask for apprenticeships at shops, and they'll just never get one. And literally here I was just sitting poolside in the Dominican, and some dude was like, "You're going to be an apprentice. Welcome to tattooing." And
Well, it wasn't just some dude,
no,
and,
yeah, fair to say,
and
yeah,
and
it was Matt.
you'd say like being lucky, that's just being, being at the right place at the right time and saying yes to an opportunity. Like,
Sure.
what did you have to lose?
Then that's the way he put it. He's like, what are you doing right now? He's like, you have 9 months off. Let's go do this. I was like, he's right. Like,
And you're totally into tattoo culture, always have been, right? So
yeah, I was already heavily tattooed by then.
makes sense. All right. So as we come down to the end of this, I guess, I've got a couple of quick fire questions. They don't have to be quick fire. You can ramble on if you want.
No, cut me off, man.
Okay. So first question, real simple. Do you prefer cake or pie?
I overthink it. I'm going to overthink everything. I'm going to say pie.
Good man. So if there's a live event that you wish you could have attended, or one that you could go back and experience again for the first time, where would you go?
Something I've never done before. I appreciate things I've done and would love to do them again, but I would always take something I haven't done versus something I've already done. Mm-hmm. So what would it be specifically now?
Yeah. And it can be like, you could time travel. Like, just what would you wish you could have attended?
Oh, including time travel?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, fuck. It'd be something in the 50s then. I don't even know what. Whether it'd be like racing for pink slips or a stiletto fight in an alley, or playing like rock and roll for the first time, being the guy to claim you invented it. Like, excuse me, Chuck Berry, just for a second, can I borrow that? And you step in. I guess they spoofed that with Marty McFly already anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Go back and say I invented rock and roll. It'd be hard to say because like the blues before it was so good. So do you go back and invent that? Like, then you're cheating and stealing. I don't know. I don't really want to go take credit for anybody else's work. I just would love to live a day in the 1950s. Would be awesome. So maybe go back and see Chuck Berry's first show or Elvis's first show, something like that. Some sort of specific moment, like go
just in some dive bar, like fucking 12 people kind of thing.
I would probably say go in the 50s to Sun Studios and hang out with Sam Phillips for the day, because A, I'm in the 50s, and then B, I'm in Sun Studios, like two dreams of mine. And then in any given day, you could literally see 10 different legends walk through those doors. You know what I mean? Like, oh, there's Scotty Moore, there's Jerry Lee Lewis, there's Carl Perkins, like there's Roy Orbison. Like, what the fuck? Like, this place is crazy. Like, that was just a normal work day to them.
Yeah,
like,
that was a weekday.
Yeah, so I'd like to go witness something legendary in the 50s that ties into music for sure.
Yeah. But what would be your favorite or oldest piece of gear that you'll never part with?
Oh, fuck. I already have. Have parted with it. One specific that I regret and haunts me. Oof. There's a long list, dude. I'm such a gear whore. And I rotate fast. Like, I'm constantly flipping high-end music gear. And I don't mean that as a brag. I just mean as like, my attention span is short and I like them to work. So I get good ones. I didn't know a polite way to say that. It sounds corny. Fuck. I have flipped so much gear in my life. I could probably rapid fire a few. I regret getting rid of my Gretsch Black Falcon. I regret getting rid of my orange full stack. I regret getting rid of my 1977 black on black Rickenbacker bass. Some vintage arch tops over the years I've gone through. Giant arena sized drum kits. Fuck, I don't know, man.
You still have that Yamaha hollow body?
The blonde?
Yeah.
No, but I always know where it is. It's like every time I go to sell it or like long time loan it, I always know where it's going, and I'm like, that comes back to me, first dibs. And I've done that a few times with different friends. I think Jack had it for a bit.
You did, yeah.
And Mike Sutton had it for a bit. And then I'd get it back, and I'm like, this isn't going far. So most recently, it was in the hands of my buddy Travis in Moncton, killer player. He owns Nerdful Things down in Moncton. Shout out Travis.
Yeah.
Smoking guitar player too. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No. Finish your thought.
Lots of flipped gears, I was going to say, and lots of hollow bodies. I like hollow bodies a lot. F-holes, stand-up basses and hollow bodies. Well, fuck,
yeah, that blonde, the blonde telly you had with the F-holes in it, that was pretty sweet too.
Yeah, 72 thin line with the wide range humbuckers. So I miss that. That's one of my regret lists. Fuck, that was a smoking guitar.
So what would be your proudest accomplishment as an artist?
of any art form, or like music or tattoos or photography?
Open-ended, man. It's open-ended.
Oh, fuck, I don't know.
First thing that comes to mind.
I'm not very good at any art form, but I like dabbling in a whole bunch of them. So I don't really have any big accomplishments in any art field because I'm crappy at most things I do. But my passion's there. Like I enjoy doing the things I do, and I love.
But so again,
I don't.
your proudest. What are you most proud of?
I wouldn't say it's one thing. Maybe proud that I'm versatile in a lot of things, and I feel grateful for getting to do a lot of things. I don't know, that's such a vague cop out answer.
No, that's
maybe my versatility is the thing I'm the most proud of. Like I'm not a very good musician, but I'm good enough that I could go play with a lot of different genres or a lot of different bands or maybe even a couple different instruments. So maybe I'm more proud of that. Does that make sense?
absolutely. And I think part of that isn't just that you're good at each instrument, but you're brought on to different projects and asked to play with a lot of different people.
I am, yeah.
More so, not just because of your ability, although the ability is there, but it's because of you as a person.
Oh, I don't know. I don't get that. I mean, I kind of get what you're saying, but I'm such a douche. I would think it would be the opposite. But like,
you're like a fucking no, dude. Like, you're like a fucking peanut M&M. You get the hard shell, and then you get the soft gooey chocolate, and then a big sack of nuts.
I'll take it. Thanks. I think. Yeah, I don't know. So that's a really flattering compliment if you genuinely mean that. Because
I do.
When I look at that in reverse, as I get older as a musician, that's one of the key things I look for in someone else. So for you to say that to me, I understand that and appreciate that. Thank you. I know that I think in my teens, when you're looking for bandmates, you're just looking for anybody who owns an instrument. I don't even care what you listen to. We were talking about it earlier. Like, I'm 14, you're 14, you have a kick drum, and I have a guitar with no amp. Like, fuck it, let's start a band. And then in your 20s, you think you know some shit, and you think you're better because you learned a couple of fucking technical songs, or you're getting better tone, and you're like, you got a little bit sort of a medium amount of better gear, and you think you're the shit. You start looking for guys with that. You're like, can you play this song? You at least got a half stack or bigger. You know what I mean? It's like, don't bring any little combo to our jam. You have to at least have a half stack now. We're in our 20s. Like, and then it comes full stacks and blah, blah, blah. So you get to that. You think that's what matters in a bandmate. And then by then your 20s, you're doing some road gigs, maybe some tours, like depending on what you're doing and what you choose to do. But like in my 20s was starting to tour a bit or fucking be in multiple bands, and like, you start getting sick of some dudes and their attitudes or things that are peripheral outside of their musicianship. You're like, yeah, he can play guitar and yeah, he's got a nice amp, but what a fucking prick. Like, I don't want to be in a van with that guy for 10 hours. So then you learn as a musician, you're like, oh, that's going to start to be a thing I care more about when I look for other dudes. Is you're like, I don't care if you're maybe not even that good of a bass player, but like, I like you. I can hang out with you. We can go rock beers and coffee in the morning. We can hang out on the road in vehicles. I know we're not going to get in arguments or get in a fight. I know you're not going to steal from people. You're not a junkie. You're just a cool dude. I'd rather that as I get older. So the ability to get along with people means a lot in a coworker situation or bandmate situation. You know what I mean?
And sometimes bandmates are coworkers. Like, I don't mean that. I don't mean that in the way that I work with Jack at our day job. I mean, like, if you're doing it as a profession, then technically your bandmates are your coworkers.
Well, there's different levels of that.
Yeah.
Of gigging, right? So underground music, not so much. You're just buddies and you're a passion project. You don't expect money and you don't expect fame or accolades. It's just like, we're going to bang out some punk rock chords and it's going to be the best time ever. And that's a hobby. But I have been in situations as a working musician as well. Like I've done, say, session work on people's albums, or I've done like session work in people's live bands. I go fill in for the night or whatever, or like different things. And that is very much a professional situation. And you do have to be someone's coworker. You have to respect there's probably someone as a band leader that technically is now your boss for the night. So when the singer turns around and says, I want it in this key and come in on the one, and you're like, you better, get your shit together. So within that context, it's also nice if you can be friendly and polite and respectful and have a laugh and maybe, have a good time with those people while you're technically working. If you're all laughing and smiling by the end of the gig, you're probably going to get the phone call to come back for the next gig. You're like, man, that time we worked with that George dude, he was a barrel of laughs. Like,
He
Call
knew
him up.
his lane. He knew his lane, and he stayed in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that can go a long way. So thank you for what you said earlier. I do appreciate that.
Last question. So if you, let's say you got a call and you're going to go out on the road, and somebody pops a CD in the CD player because it's an old fucking Brown Vic. What CD do you not want them to put in?
Oh man. Oh fuck. This is funny because like in the minor amounts of touring I have done, it's funny because these are things that can get on each other's nerves sometimes. Like even when the band or the CD is good and you actually love it, sometimes on that road trip it's just been spun too many times. Like, fuck. The one thing I will not tolerate, I don't know, like I'm gonna have to say like maybe a genre or like an era, maybe. Not this one artist that truly just like instantly gets under my skin and I want to fucking puke. And then there's lots of individual artists I could name. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna say the thing I probably hate the most on earth for music would be 90s or newer country. Because it just isn't.
I call that bro country.
Okay. Well, yeah. Whatever. I'll even just say it probably started really in the late 80s with like too much cocaine in the studios, too much ego, and then Mutt Lange and like non-traditional country producers coming in. And then once you've got the like, I'll say the last shit I remember even sounding like country music, the end of mid 80s, maybe like maybe some of the Randy Travis or even Reba stuff might be still acceptable, but like when you get into like that Brooks and Dunn and that fucking Alan Jackson and the Achy Breaky guy, like all of that shit newer, like fuck, that is garbage music. And I get mad and I would literally throw that out the fucking window. Yeah. And I mean anything from then until now. Like there isn't a modern country artist you could name that I wouldn't laugh at, I don't think.
There's a few that are kind of making their way up now that are going back to that like original style of country.
That, okay, I should have chosen my words better. You're right. In any musical,
but again, that's that whole cyclical. It comes back around, right? So
true. Yeah. And even when things are at their worst, whether it's like modern rap or modern country or modern rock, any subgenre on earth, even when it's at its absolute worst of like fake pop radio versions, there's always going to be some underground kids somewhere keeping it real and kick ass. So I'm speaking, I guess, in blanket terms of it being shitty. Don't get me wrong. In the 90s, when the crappy pop country was going on, there probably was some dude in Nashville with an old pair of shit kickers on, like wailing on a banjo, and he was awesome. I'm just being a mass that radio.
I know what you mean.
The public version.
I know what you mean.
Garbage.
The mass-produced industrial 20 songwriters writing about the same thing every day. Yeah. I know what you mean. Pickup truck, flat of beer, down by the river. Put on your tight jeans.
Let's go. None of them lived it. Yeah, it was just some like, French dude or whatever. Some guy that got like a hair salon guy, streaks in his hair and fake rips in his jeans. And it's like a processed thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime you take the realness out of something, I'm out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Even if it's a music genre I don't like, I'll respect it if it's genuine. You know what I mean? I don't listen to techno music, but I could hear underground, old school acid pop jazz or whatever the fuck it's called, acid house, and it'd be like, well, that sounds like a dirty punk rock version of like that sounds legit versus hearing some Casio keyboard demo button thing. I'd be like, oh man, this is fucking garbage. But you were saying earlier, you started the question with if I was on tour, what would be the one thing in the CD player to make me sick? I'll say 90s country, but if I was on tour with some dudes I'm advanced with, like 9 times out of 10, they would just have awesome taste in music, and we all get along for that reason. I wouldn't be in a band with a dude that was listening to shit like that. So I don't think it would be an issue in that scenario. It used to be a lot of times when I did most of my road work in my 20s and 30s. I don't really tour much anymore now. Most of my 20s and 30s, it was usually my vehicle. So 9 times out of 10, it was my CDs in the CD player. And my CD wallet would have covered every genre on earth. And then the only, I guess, exception would be like, trying to think of the years. Like if a friend got in and they had like a phone, a digital device on them, and they could aux cord into my dash, maybe they could pick the music. But 9 times out of 10, if we were on tour or just a normal local road trip type gig, then it was probably my music all the time. And a lot of times, I'll tell you this, I don't like using the word tour because it gets stretched too thin.
Hey, just on the road.
Yeah, so local-ish or regional road shows, like around the Maritimes. I won't even call that touring. I'll just say regional road work. The drives are like only a couple hours at a time, and then back home usually after the gig. Sometimes, depending on how many road gigs you got in a row. But I don't really think about the music too much. It's like your drive is like the length of a Tim Hortons coffee and a couple cigarettes, and then you're at the gig. Like it's not usually if I'm with a buddy in the car, we'd almost just turn the music down.
Just chat.
Yeah. But I noticed the lengthier the road trip, like if you're on what's actually a tour, it's better to listen to genres of music that you're not performing because you get ear fatigue and almost mental like sick of that genre because you're overexposed.
Yeah.
I did notice that the few small tours that Helm did, and we did a couple when I was in the band, it wasn't metal we were listening to in the car. And both Mark and Tommy both have amazing taste in music. I'll give them full credit for that, is they like every genre on earth the same way I do. So a lot of times we'd be on tour in Helm, this like heavy, thick, woolly doom metal band, and we'd be listening to like fucking Beastie Boys or Tribe Called Quest or Elvis or fucking like or surf music, or you know what I mean? Like we would do almost anything but metal.
Yeah, that's what Patty told me when he was on the podcast. When they're on the road, they listen to a lot of punk rock because like you got to think they're playing punk rock. There's all the opening bands that play for them every town, so that ear fatigue is real. So when they're in the car or the bus or van or whatever, it's rarely going to be punk rock. It's going to be like Johnny Cash or just some other genre other than punk rock.
You need to switch up.
You need a break.
You do. It's almost like a palate cleanser. You know what I mean?
This has been fucking rad, dude. Thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I could ramble on for 12 more hours. Sorry, I talked
probably.
Too much.
Thanks again for doing this. Appreciate it. I love you, buddy.
Love you too, man. Take care of yourself and stay healthy and all that jazz.
I will. We'll be in touch soon enough, I'm sure.
Sounds good, buddy.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for being on the podcast. I really, really appreciate you taking the time. It was certainly a long overdue one-on-one catch-up with everything that we've got going on. We don't often get the opportunity to do that. So thank you. It means the world to me that you did it. And I'm really glad I got to find out a little bit more about you. I mean, I consider you my brother, but there's a lot of stuff that, just goes unsaid, So again, I appreciate you and I appreciate the time that you took and everything that you shared with me and with everybody else. So awesome. So I'm going to have Aaron's social media links for everything band and tattoo related. So do check them out. So with that's the episode. As far as housekeeping, got a lot going on. 2 different podcasts, 2 band projects that we're working on, putting an album out in the next couple weeks or months. Got some video shoots, a whole bunch of stuff. So and that's just the music and the podcast stuff. So I got, a regular Monday to Friday day job, and I've got a wife and kid. So they need attention too. So with that said, it could happen that some episodes might be a little late, but if so, just be patient. There's a lot more on the way. I've got some great guests lined up, and I'm really looking forward to it. So until the next one, take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you then. Bye.